Welcome, everyone, to Family Comes First. I'm Vincent J. Russo.
And I'm Victoria Roberts-Drogin. Thank you for joining us. On September 11th, 2001, terrorists flew 2 planes into the World Trade Center. All eyes turned to New York City as the buildings burned and then fell.
On that horrifying day, some people were saved by the heroic efforts of others, who we refer to as heroes. Wells' Remy Crowther was one of those heroes.
Today, we'll hear his story, the story of a young man with a red bandana who has come to symbolize the highest form of bravery. No greater love on Family Comes First. Vincent, 9/11 is a day that we will never forget. No one knew it was going to be a day that was different from any others. But in the hours and months that followed, we learned so many stories of those who had died and those who survived.
Sure, and it was such a horrific day. But yet, we're going to be joyful today.
Yes.
And we're going to share the life of Wells Remy Crowther. And I am privileged to have both of you, Allison and Jefferson, Wells's parents, here today to share your son's story.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah. Thank you for coming.
Well, we're the ones who feel privileged. Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about Wells as a boy.
Well, he was full of imagination and adventure. He was full of energy. It was always hard to keep up with Wells, and it apparently still is.
You are running.
That's right. But he was just wonderful and loving and very caring of his sisters and very protective. He had this wonderful protective nature about him, even from a very young age.
Yeah.
Was he the youngest?
No, he was the oldest.
The oldest, okay.
So you saw things in his personality that perhaps could have hinted.
He was an old soul.
Yes.
He truly was. When he was a little guy, 3, 4, 5 years old, he could say things that were so prescient and so insightful that you thought he was a 35-year-old adult. And then 2 minutes later, he was a rascally little kid scrabbling around on the floor, playing with the dog or whatever, you know. But my nickname for him as a young kid, I called him Old Man.
Huh.
And again, it was, you
How
know,
do you feel about that as a little kid?
he loved it. I'd say, hey, old man, you want to go to McDonald's for lunch today? Or,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
should we go to the playground this afternoon with your younger sister? What, you know, that's just, it just worked that way. And he was a lot of fun. He really was. But as Allison said, he was a very protective older brother and very protective throughout his life.
Of friends as well as family.
Oh yeah, and you know, his roommates at college. They said, you know, anytime there was some kind of a problem or whatever, it was always Wells who stepped up and said, okay, here's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
You do this, you do that, whatever.
He had
charge.
leadership
Yeah,
skills.
yeah.
Yes.
Leadership
indeed.
skills, right?
Very
And-
much so.
And very involved in sports as a young child.
Oh, absolutely. Athletics was a very, very large part of his life. You know the little squib they write under your photograph in your yearbook when you
Yes.
graduate from high school? His quote was, "There is no I in team."
Right.
And I'll never forget, we were,
It's incredible.
yeah, well, it's just the way he
How
was. We were
consistent.
I took him down when he was looking at colleges. I took him for an interview at Lehigh. And I was with him at the time that the interviewer asked him, Wells, what is it about athletics that you love so much? And he said, when you're involved with athletics, whether it's ice hockey or lacrosse, because he was also a fabulous lacrosse player, and in fact, that's what he played at Boston College. He said, when you're on a team like that, nobody's a white kid or an Afro-American kid. Nobody's a Chinese kid. Nobody's, from another country or whatever. You're all brothers. You're teammates. And you're working towards a common goal, and that's to win the game. And he truly believed that, and he loved it, and he lived it. He really did.
He was on so many teams.
From a very early age, too, he had a very strong sense of himself. He was really comfortable in his own skin, so to speak.
What attracted him to the firehouse?
Oh, his
And-
father,
All
and
right?
the excitement.
Because there's that connection.
When we moved to Upper Nyack, New York, we lived around the corner, literally, from the firehouse. You went down the hill to the corner, boop,
There you go.
a couple of doors down, there's the firehouse. And it was at church on a Sunday morning after services. We were in the back hall having coffee hour, and I was talking with the man who was the police chief of Orangetown, New York, and Homer Wanamaker. And I was talking with Homer. I said, Homer, do you know anything about that little firehouse down on Broadway? He says, yeah, I'm president. I said, oh, I guess you do. I said, I used to be a volunteer firefighter in my youth, and I'd love to volunteer. He said, well, come by my house. I've got an application. So that's how I joined up. And
then Wells
how
does he-
Well, he would
followed suit, followed in
he'd
your
come
footprints.
down with me on, I remember when we'd do truck cleanup, especially because we're a hook and ladder truck. So you've got a tractor and pulling a trailer that has all the ladders on it. And when you do truck cleanup, you have to pull all those ladders out, and you got to go inside there and clean out the leaves and the dirt and so forth. And he was small, and he was an 8-year-old, and he'd crawl in there with the hose from the vacuum cleaner and clean it all. And the guys loved it, and he liked them, and they liked him. So it was, a natural thing.
Tell us about the red bandana. How did that come about?
Well, my husband always carried bandanas for messy jobs. And
Handkerchief.
And we were going to church, getting ready to go to church one morning, and Wells would wear little Eton suits when he was small, and then little jackets and suits. So my husband took a white handkerchief and folded it nicely and put it in his breast pocket, and then he handed him a red bandana, and he said, "Now, Wells, don't touch the white handkerchief. The white handkerchief is for show. Here's a bandana. Keep that in your back pocket. That's for blow your nose, for messy
Right.
jobs."
Right.
And that's basically how it started. It was just as simple as that.
And
But
he always
became
had
a
it.
connection, I think, to his father. And
Sure.
So we're going to take a break.
Okay.
And then we're going to come back. We're going to share the red bandana
Okay.
and Wells's story of his incredible heroism on 9/11.
And your thoughts and feelings as everything happened as well.
Hi, I'm Todd Belisle, the president of the Center for Special Needs Trust Administration. At the center, we understand the importance of helping individuals, family members, and loved ones secure independent lifestyles. We are the nation's leading provider in trust administration services with regards to pool trust, community trust, third-party trust, and special needs trusts. The center also offers specific services for Medicare recipients who are receiving settlement proceeds. If you'd like to find out what the center can do for you or your loved one, please contact us today.
Welcome back to Family Comes First. We have been speaking with Jefferson and Allison Crowther, whose son's bravery saved the lives of many during the 9/11 attack on the World Trade Center.
The space that we're standing on right now, this is the memorial section of the Memorial Museum complex. It's a little bit over 4.5 years old at this point. It opened in September of 2011 on the 10th anniversary of the attacks, first to the loved ones of the victims and then to the general public. As you can imagine, this construction has been going on and off for about the past 14 years at this point, ever since this place was a pit, a hole in the ground after the 9-month rescue, recovery, and cleanup period. What we have around us is going to be the new World Trade Center complex. So everything that we see outside today is completely new construction. We have 3 out of the 5 buildings already in place. Behind us here we have World Trade Center 4, World Trade Center 1, often called Freedom Tower, the tallest building in the Western Hemisphere at this point, as well as the smallest World Trade Center 7. And we're going to have 2 more towers to complete this skyline. A very nice cascading effect from across the river. Very pretty. In the museum itself, we have two main exhibition spaces. One is called the Historical Exhibition, and one is called the Memorial Exhibition. Now, the Historical Exhibition exists to tell the story of the 9/11 attacks. And so we also have the Memorial Exhibition downstairs, and that is a space where you can quite literally get to know the victims themselves through the eyes of those that love them. So the pools themselves are in the actual footprints of where the towers once were. And so behind me right now, this is the South Tower footprint, Tower 2, and the North Tower footprint is over there on the other side of the plaza. And the names around these two pools are the names of the victims, not only of the terrorist attacks here in New York City, but also in Arlington, Virginia, the victims of the Pentagon attack, as well as those who were killed in Somerset County, Pennsylvania, the victims of Flight 93. In addition to the names of the passengers on board the flights, we also have the names of the first responders who came from all over the city and beyond, firefighters, officers from various rescue agencies on these pools, as well as the names of 6 other people who were not killed on September 11th, but rather 8 years prior. If many people remember that 9/11 was not the first terrorist attack here. There was a terrorist attack in 1993 in which 6 people were killed, and so we also honor their names on these memorial parapets as well. I think people react so strongly to the story of Wells because of who Wells was as a person. You know, when people come to the museum, when people come to this memorial, they aren't looking for stories of heroism done by, you know, heroes from long ago, or, you know, saints or martyrs. They're looking for stories by regular people that morning. You know, these were especially for people who have a very close connections with this place. And so the story of Wells, a 24-year-old kid who was just trying to make it in this world, trying to, you know, follow his own dreams, ending up saving so many people that morning, it really resonates with a lot of people. You don't have to, you know, be from New York or know what an equities trader is, or, you know what firefighters do to know that he was a really special guy. So being able to tell this story to such a wide range of people is actually just very humbling, as you can imagine. You know, people coming from all over the world, not having a specific understanding of what happened here, and then leaving this place with respect for what happened, or respect for the people who died, and just kind of, you know, for lack of a better word, awe, you know, of just the magnitude of what happened. It's a really humbling thing to be able to experience every single day.
What an incredible memorial and testament to those people who lost their lives tragically and those people who survived.
Sure. Yeah, it's so hard. I don't know if it's just being a New Yorker that makes it hard or harder. I know all Americans around the country will always remember that day. And I know this is difficult, on one hand, to talk about that day, but if you can share that day with us.
Well, I was at work. I was a vice president of sales for a company in Briarcliff Manor. And so I just was at work. We were planning a sales conference for the following weekend, and we received a call into the office, and it was my husband's secretary calling. I knew he had been he was planning to be in a golf outing that day, so I thought something had happened to him. So I took the call, and she said, Mrs. Crowther, Wells just called. He wants me to tell you he's okay. I said, well, Wells, why wouldn't he be okay? She said, don't you know? And I said, no, what? She said, well, a plane has hit the World Trade Center. So, of course, like everybody else around the world, then it's probably, okay, small plane, too bad for them, to, oh, major plane, what is this? The second tower's hit, and then you think this is some kind of an attack. Then the Pentagon is hit, and you say, well, this is war, but who's the enemy? And this monstrous kind of trying to grasp hold of what was happening, as everybody was. It was just unfathomable.
Yeah, because we saw it unfold in small pieces.
Yeah,
and putting it together.
So my office didn't have a television or anything, so they had a radio put on, and I went out to see what was going on, and because I had in my head Wells's message, I was able to pick it up by then. It came in about 9:13 or 9:17, right, you know, after the tower was hit, according to the timestamp on my cell phone. that we later found out. And so in my head, it was Wells saying, "Hi, Mom, this is Wells. I'm okay. I just want you to know I'm okay." So, but then when I walked out to see what was going on, they had heard the news that the tower collapsed, and they told me, and I just knew that Wells was gone. So I called my husband, and I said, "Wells is gone," and my husband said, "Don't say that. He's probably fine. He had a lot of skills. He had time to get out." And he did.
Yeah.
He just didn't choose to get out. He chose to stay and help at the scene.
Help as many folks as he could.
And when did you kind of connect the stories? How did that happen?
Oh, that didn't happen for a long time, for about 9 months. And I was, Wells was recovered from Ground Zero on March 19th of 2002. So for that whole long period of time, we knew nothing, and that was a terrible place to be. And that's where so many families are still left, which is just so cold and empty and terrible. But anyway, so they recovered Wells, and we knew he got down. So because he worked on the 104th floor, that meant that he had to pass through the sky lobby
Right.
before or
He
at
could
about
go
the time the
over.
plane hit.
Yeah.
So I was 2 months later, the New York Times came out with that big article, "Fighting to Live as the Towers Died," for Memorial Weekend. And my husband, who couldn't read or look at anything or watch video, it's too painful, he said, "Here, you may want to read this." So I took it into our bedroom, and I sat on our bed and started reading. And I came to the section that says 902 in the South Tower sky lobby, and I said, "Oh my God, if I'm ever going to see anything about Wells," because I kept looking, I kept searching, a mother would, right?
Right.
I said, if I'm ever going to see anything about Wells, I'll see it here. So I started reading that segment, and sure enough, the references started to come up about the man in the red bandana and saving lives. And obviously, he was skilled with firematic training because of the commands he was calling out to people and organizing people getting off the sky lobby.
And did you go
I
back
did. I
out?
went right in. I said, "Jeff, I found Wells. Here he is."
So we understand he saved a group of people.
Well, they were-
went down
He made 3 trips
3 trips.
from the 78th floor sky lobby down to the 61st floor, where the lights were on, the air was clear. And he'd take the first group, Ling Young was in the first group. She worked for New York State Division of Finance and Taxation. And he said, "Can somebody carry this fire extinguisher?" He had taken a small fire extinguisher off the wall, had put out some small fires, and said, "Can someone carry this?" And Ling actually carried the fire extinguisher. She was in the first group. And when they got down to the 61st floor and there was no fire, there was no smoke, the lights were on, she said, "Do I still have to carry the fire extinguisher?" And he said, "No, you probably won't have to." So she put it down in the corner in the stairwell. And he said, "You all just keep going down, keep going down." And at the 40th, the uniformed services had fire and police had an elevator, a freight elevator, working from the 40th down.
Okay, so that's how they
but
got
not
down.
any further up.
Okay.
And Wells went back up the stairs, and in the second group, Judy Ween was in the second group. And we know that, and we established a timeline with Judy because she said when they got to the 61st floor, she saw the fire extinguisher in the corner and said, "That's an odd place for a fire extinguisher."
So that's
So
how you
that's
pieced
how we knew,
together
yeah,
that
we
he
could-
had already.
he
Well,
had-
actually, they did it. Ling and Judy pieced this all together before they contacted us to say we think this is the man,
Well,
because
Ling-
everybody wanted to be sure. We didn't want to, think it was Wells. If it wasn't, that wasn't the point. We just
But,
so that
but
was.
Ling will tell you that the minute she saw his photograph that we had sent to her, Allison made copies of some photographs, and she actually had messenger services take them down to her in New Jersey. And,
Wasn't wasting a second.
but the minute she saw the photograph, she said, "That's him. That's the man. That's the man who saved my life." And she always
How old was Wells?
24.
24. So young.
24. And he, had a very good career as an equities trader at Sandler O'Neill and Partners. He was doing very well there. But in August of 2001, he and I talked every day on the phone. after the markets closed, because he was an equities trader. We were on the phone. He said, Dad, I think I want to change my career. And I said, really? You want to change your career? I mean, you're in the cat seat here, buddy. This, cat bird seat. I don't know, whatever it is. You're in a very
good place.
Good place. You've got a great job, and you're making very good money. You're for a 24-year-old man. I mean, that's phenomenal. He said, yeah, Dad, but if I sit in front of this computer for the rest of my life, I'll go crazy.
Oh, my goodness.
Wells was a man of action. And he said, Dad, I want to be a New York City firefighter. And I said, wow. I said, really? He said, yeah. I said, well, you're not going to get paid like you're getting paid. Dad, money's not everything. My life was meant for something much more important.
Oh, my goodness.
And he truly believed that. And I just want to back up a little bit. He was with us 2 weekends before 9/11 up at our home in Upper Nyack. And as Allison was taking him to the train, he said, Mom, I don't know what it is, but I'm going to be part of something very, very big. And, so all I can tell you is the good Lord put him here knowing that he was going to need him at some point. And he stepped up when the Lord called on him. He stepped up and he did his job.
I'd like to pick up on Wells's legacy.
Yeah, what's happening today.
And it's so inspirational. Share with us all the different activities that have arisen and the charitable work you're doing.
The opportunity arose a couple of years ago, in time for the 10th anniversary, to around that time, supported by the Fetzer Institute, to develop our next creative steps. So I said, well, what we need is a curriculum to teach character lessons, and that's where Wells's legacy is really working now. And we have a curriculum called the Red Bandana Project for elementary, middle, and high school students, sports teams, and camps and youth programs. It's available around the country through our website, Red Bandana Project.
The website is?
The redbandanaproject.org is the educational one, and crowthertrust.org is our charitable arm that includes information on our fundraisers. But I also travel the country speaking to schools. I've been out on Long Island a lot. Many communities in Long Island, wonderful people, have invited me out to speak to students. And my husband comes and speaks with me too sometimes.
Sure, and my alma mater, also Boston College, so I know the school's been incredibly supportive.
Absolutely.
They host the Red Bandana Run every fall when there's not a football game on campus, and that's our major fundraiser for the Trust now.
Wells continues not only to live in your lives and inside your heart, but with thousands and thousands of Americans
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
who just are grateful and inspired.
Wells's legacy, his actions, his spirit is a gift that he's left to us to help us go out and bring good into the world, which is our mission.
You do.
Yeah, thank you.
We're going to take a break, and we will be right back on Family Comes First. Joining us now to share his experiences as our spiritual advisor is our dear father, Tony.
I want to thank you so much for allowing me to witness the beautiful testimony of the Crowthers and their son Wells and the impact his life had. And as I was listening to their testimony, I was just had this image in my own heart of, first of all, I guess that image of a pebble in a pond. Certainly we're aware of how an act of evil can ripple out and the ripple effects, the terrible ripple effects of 9/11 and the terrible tragedies that emerged for our country and all of the horrible after effects of that day. But also on the positive side, how that positive act of loving kindness, the heroism of no greater love, has even a greater ripple effect. That one life, Wells's life, not only has a legacy in the Red Bandana Project, but also the lives that he saved, their lives likewise now are going to ripple out into positive love for others as they've been recipients of sacrificial love themselves. It's awesome.
Yeah, and the work that they do, we all have that potential in us, But when someone puts it in front of you and says, this is what's possible, you know, we've talked about what would you do if you were in that situation? And
I don't know. Unless you're in it, I don't think anyone
You
could
can't
say
know.
for sure. But it's amazing how people respond to crisis. People respond to other people in need. And Wells just had it in him.
Yeah.
And
that
it
truly is the grace of God.
Grace of God.
God had called him from a young age to
Right.
be other-centered.
Right.
And it was the grace of God in that moment that inspired him, co-workers, other people, total strangers. It didn't matter. As it didn't matter on the team, we were all one. We're all
Right.
part of the same team. And we help each other. But that is the grace of God at work in those extraordinary moments to motivate us to do extraordinary things.
I also believe that there were many others, maybe hundreds, maybe thousands of other individuals in those towers who were incredibly heroic, and maybe they didn't survive, or maybe we don't know about their stories, but I just believe in that goodness that people have.
Yeah.
That, you know, if you're running to safety and you saw someone who needed help, I believe there were many, many people who stopped and tried. Thank God for the goodness in people who gave of themselves to help the victims of 9/11. We will always remember the man in the red bandana. May Wells Remy Crowther's rest in peace.
so for information, more information about the Crowthers and their organizations and how you can support people who are still dealing with the ramifications of 9/11, please visit Family Comes First. The website is at Vincent's law firm's website, which is vjrussolaw.com.
Yeah, we'll list all of the charitable organizations. I know first responders today are having a very difficult time with their health and
Yes.
medical needs, and we'll get as much information as we can to be as helpful as we can.
Yep.
Thanks to all of our viewers for joining us, and remember, family truly does come first.